Hello everyone, I am Madeleine Stojcheva, web developer at PropTech Bulgaria, and today I have the honor to present to you our next speaker, part of the Tech Track Hot Topic Ateliers, Dobrin Mirevski. Dobrin specialized in the field of businesses management for the last 24 years, working with customers and partners in 25 countries around the world. He has always been fascinated by technologies, even considered becoming an engineer at a certain point in time. Upon his return to Bulgaria in 2015, he turned the passion into a professional path, deep diving into business digitalization. In his role of IT system development manager for EOS in Bulgaria, he is involved in the development and implementation of innovative digital technologies supporting debt and businesses assets management. Hello, Dobrin.
Thanks a lot for the introduction, Madeleine. It's a pleasure. Hello, everybody. Hope you're having a great time today with the nice event we are attending. And hopefully, being the afternoon, you're not too asleep and ready to dive a bit into digital technologies. So, as Madeleine said, my name is Dobrin Mirevski, and I'm part of the organization of EOS in Bulgaria. What I want to cover today are basically two things. First, setting a bit the stage of letting you know who we are and what we do, what we define as distressed property asset management, because it's not, let's say, the most traditional field, I guess. And then showcasing two technologies we are using for managing those distressed property assets and how they help us into the process. So let's dive into it. Who we are, the EOS Group. We are a technology-driven financial investor present in the... Sorry, Madeleine, did you say something? Yeah, okay, thanks. So EOS Group is a technology-driven financial investor and expert in the processing of outstanding receivables. As you can see from the map, we are present in pretty much everywhere in the Northern Hemisphere. It's 26 countries, about 60 companies in total in the group, roughly 7,000 employees, and about 20,000 customers we are serving worldwide. Locally here in Bulgaria, we are since 2002, so quite for a while, undisputedly the biggest player in the field with two entities and two operational locations, and currently handling a portfolio of roughly 1.7 billion euros. In terms of investments, NPLs, which stands for non-performing loans, and real estate in need of restructuring, a core business line and a growth area for EOS. As you can see from the charts, in the last fiscal year, we invested roughly 190 million euros into such type of assets, with a book value of close to 600 million euros. So these are very brief numbers. Feel free to ask in the Q&A session more about the company and the group, or just reach out after the session. What is that thing, distressed property assets management, that we are into as a business line? The definition for us of distressed property assets are assets which are investment in real property, which is priced below the market value, typically due to solvency or cash flow issues on the part of the asset's operator, manager, or owner. To put it in everyday terms, a very typical example would be a loan which has been collateralized by a property asset that has gone bad, so it's become a non-performing loan, and we will be buying this one together with the collateral behind it, which is the asset, and we have to deal with that asset. So this is the type of real estate business we are into. And from that perspective, as you can imagine, that requires really multi-segment and multi-directional efforts afterwards. So once we have invested into such type of distressed asset, we first of all need to do investor relations on buying such assets, investor relations on selling such assets. Definitely, we cannot do that, especially when we have large portfolios, necessarily fully on our own. So we would need to get involved into broker relations and dealing with different brokers depending on the classes of assets we have. In order to protect our interests best, sometimes we need to take care of insuring those assets. So we are also into an insurance relationships with insurance providers and brokers. Like any other asset which is for sale, you need to promote it and you need to do advertising about it. Then you need to properly manage the asset as such, including sometimes leasing it, taking care of maintenance or other things. And sometimes we have to do really a real estate investment on top of it. A typical example would be acquiring a distressed asset, which is, so to say, semi-finished, so something which is still in the process of being built or released for use. And we have to further invest after acquiring it to finish it up before we can sell it. So within that framework, there are basically three main lines of achieving a debt recovery, because this is our primary business, recovering those debts which are backed by distressed assets. On most of the occasions, these are property assets. And these three lines are the following. First, we can do amicable debt collection, which means that together with the debtor, we work towards resolving the situation. And that may include an asset acquisition or jointly promoting and selling the asset. The second very common path of development would be the legal resolution of the case, where we would be involving the legal and the court system and the bailiffs in order to resolve the non-performing loan situation. And that mostly includes execution actions and public auctions for the properties. And last but not least, there comes the REO, the real estate owned, which typically we would do acquiring the asset with the idea of selling it afterwards and recovering the investment and realizing the profit we are aiming at. So these are the three main things we are doing in order to resolve the situation. As you can see, it's pretty complex. It touches pretty much on anything you can think of when you say real estate. So quite understandably, no matter how mighty Excel is and how many businesses would be run almost exclusively on Excel, this is not the type of business you would like to run on Excel, especially when you are investing millions of euro into it and you have hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands of cases. So we are employing technology, and the two technologies I want to show you today and explain a bit more about are, in first place, the integrated management system, and in second place, the robotic process automation. So integrated management system, almost with the start of the company, we realized that especially when it comes to distressed property assets, there is very little supply of adequate softwares, especially ones that can encompass the complexity that you saw in the previous slides in one and the same system. So it was a very conscious choice of the company to make our own system, to produce the core software. We will do our business with ourselves, respectively prepare the team and execute such a project. So currently we are working with a system that we call internally Matrix 3, which is an integrated management system which allows us to encompass all those processes that we need to do in a single core system that would provide for efficiency and for efficacy in executing our workout strategies. The system can be characterized with dedicated user screens. So every particular player in our business would get a user interface, which is tailored to their needs, which shows them the right information in the right format at the right time, providing them with the right functionalities to do their particular job, which could be very different. An asset manager would do quite different things than a legal advisor or than a customer relationship manager or someone from sales and marketing who would be doing the advertisements of the properties. Given that we deal with portfolios, the system allows for single case processing as well as for batch processing. So you can do either at the very granular level or do batch operations over multiple distressed assets. It has cross-functional workflows which allow within the system automation of work and collaboration between the different departments and the different players without having to leave the system or use different systems, which is a very typical example for some other situations where one department will be using one system, second department will be using the second system, third one, a third one, and it becomes at the end of the day a zoo of softwares. We have embedded business roles that would enforce those workflows and doing the business the right way. Respectively, that goes with a very elaborate task management system, because at the end of the day, it all has to be broken down to tasks that have to be completed in order to provide for the proper execution of the workout strategy. They say you cannot measure it, you cannot manage it. So we've taken care that there are dashboards and reporting directly integrated in the system. Again, not based on Excel. There is integrated messaging. So even for messaging, you don't have to leave the system, but you can do it out of the system with predefined templates so that you can provide the same look and feel of the experience of the other side, and also a very controlled and compliant environment. Respectively, being on most of the occasions in most of the countries where we operate also registered as financial institutions for what we do, we need to provide for a complete audit trail. So actually the system is a bit like the time machine. You can revert back time and see what happened, who did it, when, how, at which point in time, and with which tools. And that leads to compliance and to data security standards that we are obliged to follow. Like any other system, it won't be fair to say that this is do-it-all one. So quite understandably, we also have developed certain interfaces to systems which are not really the smart thing to develop on your own. A typical example for that would be the accounting system. So besides encompassing all the key specific core business things in one system, we still keep it open to communicate with other systems which are needed from regulatory or other business perspective for running the operations of the company. So this is an example. It's a tailor-made solution. It's something that is not fit to all sides and fit to all solution, but it's definitely a solution which allows us to maintain our leading position in technology. From that perspective, has always been one of our core competencies and core competitive advantage in the market since the inception of the company. The second technology I would like to share with you is the so-called robotic process automation. It's rather relatively new, let's put it like that. Technology has been for a while around, but it's hot for the last several years. We started our RPA journey roughly 3 years ago with great success, and I would say that I myself personally would definitely count for one of the evangelists of robotic process automation, not out of sales interest, but out of pure experience. So what is that thing, robotic process automation? Here you see a definition that Gartner is giving, but to bring it to everyday terms, robotic process automation is a software robot, a program that would fully imitate what you do with the mouse and the keyboard. So if there are things you would repetitively do with your mouse and keyboard, like for example transferring data from one file into another file or from one system to another system, what a robot or a bot, what is the slang they use in the technology, would do is actually do that for you, emulating the same clicks with the mouse and the keystrokes you do on the keyboard like you will do it yourself. So this is, in a nutshell and a bit simplified, the essence of robotic process automation. Respectively, it's a technology which very easily allows to bridge different systems without involving that much of a technical development, without writing code, without doing APIs or doing the heavyweight integration between systems. It's a lightweight of integration, extremely powerful, it turns out, from using it in reality, and with a very, very short payout period. So from operational expenses and from an investment perspective, it is in many occasions, it turns out to be a much smarter choice than developing software on your own or even buying a dedicated software. So what we do in our distressed property asset management with robotic process automation, within that multitude of tasks and things we need to do to manage the distressed assets portfolios, there are a lot of tasks and a lot of things which are very repetitive, very well structured, but still it's a human doing them today. So we analyzed all these and we came out with a list of what are the things we can have the robots do instead of people. There's a very nice saying I read somewhere as a definition of RPA, that RPA is the technology which takes the robot out of the human, leaving to the human to do the human cognitive thinking part only, but taking away all the technical, repetitive, mundane actions. So what we do with RPA is, for example, automatically publishing and maintaining property sale announcements. You're fully aware that when you are selling a property, you have to circulate the information in multiple channels, keep all these in sync. One has 2 weeks of expiry term for every ad, the other one has 10 days, the other one is 1 month or never. So it's really a tedious labor to go side by side and publish all those things, or get a platform that deals with only 5 of the most common ones, but the 6th one that you want to use is not on board, it's still in the platform that you are using. So what we did is we created robot, which would be taking care, once feed it with the information in a structured way for what the ad should contain, that will go through all the sites which are our target and will make sure that this information is published and then properly maintained for the length for which this is needed. Another one which is very common when you deal with properties, especially from the legal standpoint of view, is doing different online register checks. For those of you who are familiar with the Bulgarian environment, there would be systems like KAIS and the National Property Register, and similar registers exist pretty much in all the countries in the European Union already. And they're online and they're accessible online. So instead of having a person doing the copy-paste, check, download, upload flow, you have a robot which is properly instructed and trained, and the robot will go based on the tasks from the system and will check for each and every property the needed records in the registers, will download and analyze the information, and will make it available in the core system to the respective user. Another thing which is part of our processes and is also turned out to be a good opportunity for robotization is identifying distressed property asset by opportunities. So you need to regularly check certain sources of information and analyze them to see whether there are new opportunities. Instead of having a human doing that, we have the robot collecting and processing as much as possible the information, so that it is presented then in an already processed and ready for decision making format to the respective employees of the company. Robots help us, for example, match investors who are interested in certain properties with properties that we have or expect to have, and providing that initial analysis and matching. Quite surprisingly, because typically legal is considered to be a field where you need very highly skilled and trained professionals, and they just have to do the job manually. It turned out that even in legal processes, like in public auctions or in bailiff actions in execution, there are quite few things that are actually very well defined, very predictable, and if you approach it smart, you can have the robot doing a lot of those things. A good example here would be, for particular typical cases, having the robot preparing the bailiff requests automatically, so no human being involved in preparing bailiff requests. Also, being a global player across Europe, we have local specifics and local sites and companies and portals, but there is also a group portal where we aggregate the information from all the countries, and again, instead of somebody preparing files, sending them, somebody processing them, so that this information is available at the global portal, which is not directly linked to the local ones, we have a robot that would be gather that information and publish it on the global portal, gathering it from all the respective countries. And as you see, it's a never-ending list. Really, with robotic process automation, the situation is that you have the sky as a limit. Most of the researchers in the field from really reputable research organizations show that about 80% of the process in a typical organization can be robotized. So there is huge field for improving any area, including PropTech, by using RPA. So that's briefly the two approaches. As you see, they sit on quite the two ends of the spectrum. One is a very highly customized, very integrated system, which is dedicated and meant for a particular industry and particular thing. While on the other side, you have more generic mechanism as the RPA, which can be very successfully adapted to a PropTech environment. So that's been, for the time being, on my side. I think we are quite on time, so would be really glad to answer any questions you have or hear your comments and get a bit more interactive involved into a discussion.
Okay, Dobrin, so I have some icebreaker questions for you. Has technology helped you? Yeah, has technology helped you during the past COVID-19 months, and how?
Definitely yes. I think we are currently having actually a very good example of how we can effectively participate in an international event without pretty much all of us having to travel to a single spot and a single location. We've used hugely technology, and actually, let me put it differently. The fact that we were so focusing on technology for the last 10, 15 years helped us to do a very smooth transition to working remotely and continuing with the business in an efficient manner, not really losing efficiency or suffering that much from the COVID situation due to the availability of technology. Surely we had to work out few things that we were not paying so much attention to while still going physically to the offices. But yeah, technology helped a lot, and it keeps on helping us continue working and do our regular business without too much of trouble actually from the situation.
Okay. And my second question is, do you partner with external solution providers in your digitalization efforts?
Definitely yes. If as I said, the two things we do are quite on two different ends of the spectrum. With the local with the custom made management system, it's mostly an internal effort because it has a lot of specifics, and it's a bit harder to onboard an external partner and get them in all of the details of your business. But with RPA, actually, we started with an external partner, with a Bulgarian company that supported us in building our first robots. Actually, they introduced us the technology first. Then they helped us build our first robots until we started building in-house capacity for dealing with robotic process automation. And we still partner with them on, let's say, more advanced functionalities or situations where we will need extra support, because they're really the deep experts into RPA. So yes, we are open to partnering with external organization as far as that's mutually beneficial, and as far as they have an interesting technology to offer.
Okay.
And we are regularly receiving, reviewing, discussing and onboarding such technologies. Actually, only yesterday afternoon around the same time, we were having a call with an external partner for a new communications technology that might help us in even more effectively doing our business. So it's very likely that we already within the next couple of weeks, we will organize a proof of concept and a trial with them.
Oh, okay. And are the solutions you develop available commercially, or they are for in-house use only?
For the management system, the situation is that we offer it commercially, but we are not pushing it commercially, so to say. Being the leader in our field and basically working with every big player which is related to our business, would that be financial institutions, the realtors, and so on. We got requests historically for our system, and actually we have provided it for use. We have sold it to external partners. When it comes to RPA, I would say that we would rather support somebody in getting in contact with the right specialists in the field rather than doing it ourselves, because it's, as I said, a bit more generic technology, and then it would be, I wouldn't say unlikely, but it would be lower probability, let's say, of usefulness. Robots that we have developed and adapted to our particular needs to be readily available or readily usable for someone else. But yeah, now when you ask, why not? I mean, even that could be explored.
Okay, and one more question. Have you quantified the business benefits effects from using integrated systems or robots?
Yeah, well, actually, this is part of every technology decision that we take. We don't go blindly just because we like the idea or because it's fancy. We do quite rigorous business analysis for every technical solution that we onboard, and that becomes part of our toolbox, so to say. So we are doing a prior analysis of what savings or what effects we might be getting. Typically, we would calculate that into full-time employees equivalent, because generally our business, besides capital intensive, is also human labor intensive. I mean, you need people to process those portfolios. And later on, once the technology is onboarded, we go back to these initial assumptions and we verify whether they're correct. Are we really on track of what we were planning, and do we get the gains that we were envisaging? Luckily, I would say on most of the occasions we are right, but it's not also impossible, and we've had such situations where actually the technology wouldn't prove itself once you put it into reality. So for that reason, we would typically run, especially when it comes to also external suppliers, we would run a kind of a proof of concept and a pilot project. And if in reality the assumptions are confirmed and the efficiencies are there, this will become then a standard tool in the toolbox.
Okay, thank you very much. It was a pleasure to talk with you and present your presentation. Our next keynote is using image recognition AI for more accurate IVMs with Georgi Demirev. So see you at the next Hot Topic Atelier.
See you later.